everybody. This is Adam Fromal and Dan Favale here with the Full Court Press. Today we want to talk about Russell Westbrook, who's just gone down with scope surgery that is going to keep him out until after the All-Star break. This came out of nowhere, and it came at a time when the Oklahoma City Thunder were absolutely rolling through the NBA. Not just the Eastern Conference, not just the Western Conference, everyone. Since Westbrook came back, they've been 20-4. He's been playing out of his mind, averaging 21, 6, and 7. He looks great, but now we're going to have to deal with a long, prolonged absence from him. And we don't yet know if the Thunder can survive near the top of the league. They've gone 2-1 without him before he came back at the start of the season, and Durant struggled a little more than we're typically used to seeing him struggle. So, Dan, are you worried at all about the team as a whole?
I'm worried only because there's so little that we know about the Thunder without Russell Westbrook. He hadn't missed any games until last year. He hadn't missed any regular season games until this year. And, we can point to the playoffs and see that they got flummoxed by the Memphis Grizzlies and had trouble closing out the Houston Rockets. But at the same time, is that enough to say that they can't win without him? And they only played 3 games without him this season. So it's tough. I'm worried only because they don't know about life without him. And I don't think they're even remotely prepared for life without him. Jeremy Lamb and Reggie Jackson have been playing well, and Steven Adams has been playing well, so maybe they are deeper this year than they were last year. But what do you do when a top 10 star, let's just call him what he is, a top 10 star, goes down? And Durant is my biggest worry. Westbrook's absence screwed his efficiency at the beginning of this season and the beginning of last season. He definitely screwed his inefficiency.
The biggest worry for me is Scott Brooks. I mean, he had I want to go back to the beginning of the season, and that game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, where they only scored 3 points the entire game, or whatever it actually was. It stands out in my mind because the Timberwolves were prepared for that game, and no one else really was. They shut down Durant. They held him to some total in the teens, and it was really worrisome for me because the Thunder were supposed to be preparing for Westbrook missing weeks at the start of the season, not coming back so soon. And despite that, Brooks still hadn't created some new wrinkle for the offense. There was no preparation. It was almost like, here, let's give the ball to Durant and hope that he can bail us out. That was all we saw for them. And now that this is coming out of nowhere, that really worries me going forward.
I 100% agree with you. And I think the only saving grace for them is that they are a little bit deeper in terms of Jeremy Lamb and Reggie Jackson, I feel like are more equipped than they would have been last season to handle this. It doesn't help that they don't have Kevin Martin, but we saw what kind of happened to Kevin Martin when he became the number 2 or number 3 guy, whatever you want to say about Serge Ibaka. But that's another worry, too. Serge Ibaka was terrible without Westbrook in the playoffs. The defenses are able to zero in on him more, so it's going to come down to those two if you think about it, because Ibaka's playing well again, and he's shown he can step out and hit that corner 3 this season. So, I mean, I can't even fathom because it's still so new, and life without Westbrook is so foreign. I don't think they're going to be as dangerous, especially in that Western Conference, where the Clippers and the Rockets and the Blazers and even the Spurs, who are just consistent as hell, are just ready to just take down teams that are inferior to them.
But does it matter? That's my new question here, because I mean they're 23-5 right now, and they're right near the top of the conference. So even if he does miss until after the All-Star break, as expected, they aren't going to sink completely out of the playoff picture. That's almost entirely inconceivable. And even if they do fall to a 5, 6, 7 seed in the West, they have the talent to win a series against anyone when he comes back at full strength. So,
will he? Okay, but then
I'm not sure should exist.
Let me answer your question with another question. Will he come back at full strength? Because that's
what we don't know, because we're so used to expecting him to be superhuman. He's never missed a game, like you said earlier, until last year in the playoffs, and then the beginning of this year, and now this is going to happen. So this is a worrisome trend. And on Twitter, Bleacher Report's Will Carroll, he's their injury expert, said that this is becoming a trend, and he thinks that it could have a significant impact on his career.
I don't see how it doesn't have a significant impact on his career. I mean, you got to look at all the point guards that are out right now with knee-related injuries. Westbrook, Rose, Rondo. Does this is interesting now. We've heard a lot of talk about Rondo, and I get ACL injuries have become a little bit more routine, but like, look at what's happened to Rose. Does this mean that other players like Rondo are destined for the same fate? I mean, think about that. Like, if you're a team right now and you thought the Celtics were going to trade Rondo, if you're looking at Westbrook and Rose, you giving up anything of value for Rondo. And if this has a long-term effect on Westbrook's career, how does that affect Durant's future in OKC? Because they're not built to spend money to cover up his contract. And it's just the long-term effects could be so bad on the Thunder, on Durant, and the NBA in general. What does this say about Westbrook has been the poster boy for durability? And look, this is happening again, and it's not even that far down the road. What is this, like 6 months since he got last injured? That's not a long time at all. So I'm not going to say he's screwed. I'm not going to say he can't come back at full strength. But I think the Thunder as a team are in trouble long term because they rely on Westbrook a lot more than I think we realize, and I think we kind of saw in the playoffs last year. Again, you can't say they're finished, but it does matter. This injury matters. This matters to them before the All-Star break, and it's going to matter to them after the All-Star break when he has to find his groove again, when he kind of has to change his play style. He can't play the same way anymore if his knee is swelling after he continues to be explosive, because then you're probably going to lose him once or twice a year.
Well, I think if this 2013-14 season has taught us anything so far, it's been a sort of a loss of innocence lesson, where we've seen these prominent stars like Derrick Rose, like Kobe Bryant, have major injuries and come back, and we expect them to be good right off the bat. We expect them to be absolutely dominant players, pick up where they left off, and they haven't been able to. And both of those guys got in, and they're out right now. And now we're seeing the exact same thing happen with Westbrook, which to me means that we kind of have to stop having such high expectations for these guys because they aren't superhuman. I mean, they're fantastic athletes, the best athletes in the world, you could say, but they're still human beings. And that's the most worrisome part.
You're totally right, and I don't disagree with that at all, but I'm kind of wondering if kind of after watching Kobe, after watching Rose, and now Westbrook, and kind of all these other injuries that have happened in the past, you can look at guys like Amari Stoudemire and Deron Williams, has other guys whose injuries have continued to plague them. Is it so much that we are going to expect these guys to be dominant, or is it that we're just hoping against hope at this point? Because it seems that there's too much evidence to, and I guess it's easier for me and you, as obviously fans of the game, we want to see them get better, but kind of looking at it in the bigger picture, maybe it's easier for us to say, like, we have to not expect this anymore. But in general, doesn't it kind of feel like it's more of just misplaced hope at this point, hoping against hope, hoping against logic, that these guys are going to be the same or even close to the same?
Well, that's the key for me, the last thing you said, hoping against logic. I mean, when we're setting expectations for a Kobe or a Westbrook or a Rose, half of the argument is, well, he's going to be good because he's player X. And that doesn't necessarily work. You have to look at the injury history. You have to look at how other players have fared coming back from these things. I mean, even look at Dwayne Wade, who's been playing through knee problems for a while. He has his explosive games every while, but he still has to have those maintenance days. And obviously, Westbrook's a lot younger than Wade, but I mean, could we be seeing him heading down that path? We don't want to think it, especially because he's so much fun to watch. I mean, he'd be on my list of like the 5 most entertaining players in the league without question. But I think we have to start expecting his career to fall more along those lines.
It's definitely, the expectations are going to have to be tapered, and it could be a matter of a minutes cap. This might be the end we see of him playing 35 plus minutes. Maybe he's capped at 28-30. Maybe. Again, I'm not saying he's young enough to where maybe you don't, but we almost fall into this false sense of security when they start playing well again, and that's something that has to become more talked about and people have to be more aware of, because even with Derrick Rose, they kind of got a little comfortable with him. He wasn't playing as many minutes, but they got comfortable with him, and it's just like the Knicks, when they got comfortable with Amari Stoudemire last season, he went down. And it's Deron Williams. Every time the Nets seem to like turn a corner, again, this is stemming back to last year, he goes down. And it's almost a matter of maintenance, like you said with Dwayne Wade. And there are few teams built to withstand maintenance days like the Heat. They can barely. I'm not even gonna say barely because LeBron's LeBron, but they're a team that can. But are the Thunder? Can they stand to have Westbrook play in an 82 game season? Let's say, can they have him afford to play 60? Can they afford that? Are they deep enough? You have guys like Reggie Jackson, Jeremy Lamb, but are you deep enough to where you know Westbrook's only going to give you 30 minutes a night for 60 games a year? That changes their team a lot, if that's what this becomes, which we don't know, but it could.
Well, especially because their entire franchise system has been built around drafting these star players and developing around them and counting on them to be there night in and night out. I mean, everything in OKC is built around Durant, Westbrook, and Ibaka because they had to choose between Harden and Ibaka and chose Ibaka. So that's the core. There's no changing that. If it does change, they're screwed.
And they're screwed.
I don't know how they're going to recover from that. If and that's a big if, they have to recover from it.
They're definitely going to have to recover from it in the interim. This is going to be a thing that's going to impact them more than just until the All-Star break. It's going to be a process afterwards. And it's kind of like you said, everything's built around Westbrook and Durant, and that team becomes so much easier to solve, as we saw in the playoffs, as we saw with Durant when he's the guy. Like, their offense isn't complicated. Like, they're a fun team to watch, let's be honest. They're awesome to watch. Their offense isn't complicated. It's give the ball to Durant and Westbrook and go, and there are a lot of driving kicks, a few pick and rolls sprinkled in, but that's it. It's not like they're running these complex ball movement sets. Like, that is their offense.
No, I agree with that completely. And I don't know, I'm still having trouble figuring out exactly what my new set of expectations are for this team. I think they're going to slip down in the standings while he's out. I think it's going to take a while for him to get back to peak performance if he does. But I still think they're good enough to be one of those elite teams in the West. Before he got hurt, they were looking like the prohibitive favorites in the conference. I think I'd go as far as saying that, despite how well the Blazers and the San Antonio Spurs have been playing. But I don't want to give them that tag anymore, for sure.
Do you think this team, and again, they're right up there in the standings, so I guess this is more of a subjective question than it would be to where are they going to end up. Do you think this team is still a top 4 Western Conference team?
Right now, absolutely not. When he's back from this injury, which I'm still trying to figure out whether I think it's a recurring injury, whether it's similar to that one in the summer where he had to get the same surgery done to repair swelling because the stitch broke. So if he's even at 80% when the playoffs come around, then yes, they're a top 4 team.
I would agree. I think a few of the teams at the top anyway, as of right now, are a little overrated. I can't, obviously without him, they're not. They're probably in that 5 to 7 range because of how deep
Are they even that good? Seriously, I mean, they struggled with that 8-seed Houston Rockets team pre-Dwight Howard during the playoffs this year, and they probably got a little bit worse.
Well, you also got to look at kind of the Western Conference right now, and it's almost parity to a fault because of you're seeing good teams like the Warriors and the Timberwolves who might not even make the playoffs now. So I would definitely say they're in that 5 to 7 range, probably closer to 6 or 7. I don't think they're not a playoff team without him. Again, the Grizzlies don't have Marc Gasol right now. The Lakers don't have Kobe. The Timberwolves aren't that good. They need a bench. And the Warriors have been kind of hot and cold. So, again, they're not a top 4 team without him, but they're a playoff team. They're definitely a playoff team. And the Rockets were...
I'm fine with that.
The Rockets were a good 8 last year. I think people overrated them. I mean, Harden was playing out of his mind last year. He hasn't been as good this year. And it's a top 10 player that you lost. And the fact that they're a playoff team still is impressive. But they're not a championship team without him. They're not. They're not even close. And what do you do? It's always plan for the worst, hope for the best. We're hoping that he comes back, that him and Durant are the best 1-2 punch in the NBA, as I saw you wrote about the other day, which when healthy, They probably are. LeBron and Dwayne Wade aren't what they used to be. And then after that, it really does. There isn't other conversations. Blake Griffin and Chris Paul are overrated as a tandem. What do you do if this is a long-term problem? Do you try? Do you try and move Westbrook? He gets injured again this season, or he doesn't come back. He's not the same. Do you try and move him? What do you do?
I don't think they really have a contingency plan because they've always assumed that he's just going to be in that lineup, and that makes it awfully difficult to do anything. I almost think you would need to move Ibaka.
And hope to
that would be the best solution.
Maybe pair Ibaka with a draft pick and hope to get like a number 2 scorer for real. That would have to be their plan.
Exactly, and then let Westbrook take more of a backseat role if he can even accept that, because he's such a mental player. We've seen him get frustrated and blow up on the sidelines. I don't know. I almost think he has that Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality. I think Kobe even said that once, right?
He definitely has that mentality, but I feel like he's definitely more colorful about it. Like, we see Kobe react. Westbrook reacts. Like, I would have hated to have been the doctor. Just like I would hate to be the doctor that tells Kobe he's injured. I'd be a little bit more afraid of Westbrook because we've seen him, like, smash things and just go off. I'd be afraid to tell him he had to have scope surgery.
But can 50% Westbrook play with the mentality of 50% Westbrook?
No, absolutely not. But I do think that and we kind of saw this, because he said something about why shoot the long 2 when you can shoot a 3. What if he can actually do what Derrick Rose didn't and change his game a little bit and let's call him, this is a horrible, you're going to hate me for this comparison, let's call him a more, healthy Deron Williams or Jeremy Lin point guard who doesn't attack the rim as much but can dribble inside, create for his teammates, but work on his jump shot. What if he becomes something like that? Then maybe you don't have to worry about those knees as much. That's always been our biggest knock on Dwayne Wade, hasn't it? That he didn't change his game enough. And that was our knock on Rose when he went out. He didn't change his game enough. What if Westbrook, because Rose seems too proud to a fault. Like ignorant. Too proud to ignorance. Westbrook seems more in touch with his, I don't want to say limitations, but not this is my way or the highway type deal. Like, I think that he would be more willing to adjust because he doesn't want to not be competitive because he's so competitive. I'm not saying Derrick Rose isn't competitive, but that's just my feeling between the stark difference between the two of them.
Yeah, I can see that as well. I'm still thinking about your earlier question about what they would do if he never returns to that peak performance.
I would try and move him, but his contract could be unmovable. I'm not trying to say I'm not a sentimental guy when it comes to fans of basketball, but if you can't give my team what we need, you need to go. And it's just, if he's going to be the problem, you're worried about him constantly going down, if there's someone willing to take him, you move him. I'd be the same way with Deron Williams right now. You move him. I'd be the same way with Derrick Rose right now. If you can give me cap space, picks, something, I can't count to build my team around Derrick Rose. I can't even count on Derrick Rose to be a 1B or a number 2. I'd move him. But his contract's probably immovable, so your scenario seems more realistic, more plausible. You might have to pair Ibaka with someone and try and get that number 2. And then maybe
I think you're thinking like a general manager and not an owner. And we have to think about both perspectives. Because Westbrook, you're talking about a small market team that already has a limited fan base, already has a limited ability to make money. So to have that established star, even if he's still not up to the standard he set for himself, is still valuable in terms of jersey sales, in terms of drawing fans out to that stadium. So because of that, I'm not sure they can afford to make a pennies for the dollar trade. You brought up Derrick Rose and Deron Williams. Both of those are movable assets because we're talking about Chicago and Brooklyn. But because it's Oklahoma City, they're almost pigeonholed into this team-building mentality. And until they draft another star or develop internally, I'm not sure they can afford to give up a player that marketable.
I see that. And then there's also they've already broken up one of the Fantastic Four because Ibaka, Westbrook, and Durant were super close. But you're right. I'm thinking like a general manager. Right now, in my mind, if I'm a general manager, you don't want to overreact. It's not like, let's move Westbrook now. That's not what I'm saying. You see how the rest of the season plays out. But I'm thinking 2016. Durant's a free agent. He's not, relationships are thrown out the window. I want a guy that's going to want him to come back. And this is how I would look at it. If LeBron James were to leave Miami this summer, which I don't think he will, it would be because he doesn't think he could play with Dwayne Wade anymore. You need to be able to count on that second guy. So I'm thinking you need to, yeah, you know what, maybe you take a big hit now, but maybe you get that star, that healthy star, before 2016, or give yourselves the ability so that Durant could go out recruiting in 2016. That's what I'm thinking about right now, is what happens if he doesn't recover, and I'm being impulsive about it, and I don't think they should move him now. You give it the rest of the season, and I understand what you're saying, because that team is like a fraternity, not one of the ones that get drunk every weekend, like an actual fraternity that means something with the relationships. You don't want to do anything to fuck with that, but I'm thinking down the road, 2016, Durant's already a flight risk. I don't care what people say. He's loyal to that team, but he's also been number 2 his entire life. Going to a big market where he could get that exposure, play with maybe another superstar that could get him that title for a team that will spend more for a title, he's already a flight risk, and we're talking 2 years in the making. So that's just where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting so people don't think that we're just out of our minds crazy, that we're talking about worst-case scenarios here. This is not like a likely scenario. We have no way of pinpointing exactly how he's going to play when he comes back. We're dealing with limited information, so this is not what's going to happen.
It's just like I said before, we're still hoping for the best, myself included, because I love RW, but you got to plan for the worst. And I think that these conversations amongst the Thunder need to be had at some point. And it probably starts to need to be had now, where they have a contingency plan, because you're right, they don't have one right now. So it's just, and question though, is Westbrook more expendable than Ibaka to them because of Reggie Jackson? I would say yes.
Think so.
Oh.
I don't think so. He's still such a special talent, and Ibaka is clearly not a number 2 player. I still think his defense is a little bit overrated. I still haven't seen the perfect rotations that I want to see from him or anything like that.
He's a shot blocker. That's what he is, and I think people do overrate him defensively. And it's great that he can block that many shots, but he's not rotating. He's not a great help defender. He's not a good one-on-one defender. So you're right. And I probably spoke too soon. I would be undecided. But it's going to be interesting. This is what I'm excited to see. Reggie Jackson was kind of balling last year in the playoffs without RW. I'm interested to see what if he takes that next step, and that's a conversation the front office needs to have. Maybe you flip Reggie Jackson and Ibaka for another star because you know Jackson might leave. He's going to be up for an extension soon. Or maybe you talk about moving Westbrook because Jackson's an athletic freak himself. So I'm interested to see how the Thunder handle Westbrook's absence, but I'm also interested to see how Jackson steps up.
Yeah, when Westbrook was missing time at the beginning of the season, I actually kind of decided that it was almost a good thing for the Thunder because it would force adapt and it would force Durant to learn how to play without that second star on the court, and it would force Jackson and Lamb to get experience in crunch time situations, starting games, playing big minutes. So if anything, if Westbrook is able to come back at full strength, then this could be another good thing because it gets Jackson even more experience. And as you just mentioned, it gives them the opportunity, if he really shines, to pair him and someone else, to pair him and a draft pick and upgrade that roster.
Now, I know your bacon's burning, but I've got a couple questions that we definitely need to tackle first. My first one would be what you just brought up, so I guess not really a question, more of just random thought. You're saying it was almost a good thing. Could it be a good thing now because you have Steven Adams and Jeremy Lamb, who are a little bit more exposed than obviously Adams wasn't even in the league last year when this happened, that it's not a great thing, but maybe it's a good thing because you see what those two are made of now. And you could argue that the Thunder, because of the way Martin and Ibaka played, maybe they're a little bit more deeper than last season. So do you think it could be a good thing because there's more like pleasant question marks than last year? Like, oh, what can Lamb do? What can Adams do? As opposed to just, oh, what can Jackson do?
Absolutely. Yeah, without question.
All right, my last question. Do you think this is a team who's been screwed by this injury before, just in the playoffs before? Could you see them, and again, they don't have the financial means to do something incredibly stupid, could you see them making a panic trade?
No, only because there aren't that many tradable assets on this team. I mean, if you were going to do that, you're looking at trading Jackson or Lamb, who are pretty crucial to that team's depth, or you're trading Ibaka, which they also can't afford to do because there's no player on the roster who can replace him, and there are few players who can hit that pick and pop jumper and block shots like he can. So unless they can do something like move Kendrick Perkins, there's not much that they can do.
I would love.
Maybe there's not really a trade scenario you have.
You came up with a good one where Kevin Garnett went to OKC. That would be something that they could use at this point. Gotta call the Nets. They might hold the fire sale eventually. But it is that time again. Everyone's favorite time.
Bacon! Bacon! Where's the bacon? I smell bacon! 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 Gotta be bacon! Only one thing
That's
smells
right.
like
We're
bacon!
going to find out
Bacon!
what's burning Adam's bacon and making him sizzle.
Well, even though it's 2 days after Christmas and Santa is gone and all the reindeer are gone, the Christmas Day jerseys are still burning my bacon because they are that hideous. I was actually okay with the Brooklyn Nets ones, but the Chicago Bulls jerseys made that game almost unwatchable. And in general, these sleeved jerseys are just awful. I can't watch them. I can't stand them. I'm never going to buy them. I don't know who is buying them to actually make them a profitable decision. I mean, I haven't heard anyone talk about buying these jerseys. And the worst part of it is almost every team has an excellent throwback jersey. I mean, I would have much rather seen the Bulls go out there in like those pinstriped black jerseys than that would have been better than anything, much less arguably the worst jerseys we've seen this season. So let's bring back more throwback jerseys, or let's just keep it standard. Stop with the sleeves. Stop with the hideous jerseys, please.
Well, that is Adam's take on the Christmas jerseys. For Adam, formerly known as Fromal, I am Dan Favale with the Full Court Press.